Amen. You all can be seated. And we're going to be in Psalm 42 this evening. Did anybody read Psalm 42 this week? Yay. Awesome. We got 2 of you. It's great. And I did 3. I kind of had to, so. But that's all right. That's great. Next week is Psalm 43. I'm sure most of us can count. And even if you're not sure what comes after 42, just look at the next psalm that follows that, and you'll know which one it is. So Psalm 42, I've heard this psalm preached on by a pastor when I was in college, and I actually got to hear him preach it twice. Once he came to the chapel service at the school and preached there to the student body. And then I also got to go to the church where he was the pastor at. He was our pastor for 4 years. And I had an opportunity to go to their staff chapel for the church. It was a big church. They ran around 9,000 or 10,000 on a Sunday. And so going to their staff chapel was neat. It was a neat experience. But I got to hear him preach the same thing again later on this psalm. And he titled it Soul Control. And it's very fitting. Because what we see in this psalm is the psalmist, we don't know who it was. We know that it was one of the sons of Korah. It wasn't David that wrote this psalm. But the writer, he just had to get a hold of himself. You know, sometimes you just have to get a hold of yourself. And we don't do that enough, I don't think. But we need to. And so I've kind of added the subtitle, The Art of Self-Evaluation, because what we see here is a pretty neat process that this writer goes through as he's reflecting on what's happening inside of him and why it's happening and what he's going to do about it, and then actually seeing him do something about it. And so we're going to look at both the steps that he goes through, but also the content of those to help us wrestle with it. And, you know, that his need and things may or may not be something that you've wrestled with or have in the past, or maybe you are now. But even if it doesn't apply directly with the particular thing, the process does. All of us need to get a handle on this and be able to do this. So the first thing we're going to do is we've got to consider the need of our soul. You know, you actually have to give thought to your soul. You have to give thought to yourself. You know, too often we're just going through life at a busy pace, and we never stop and reflect on, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? What might cause me to feel this way? What can I do about why I feel this way, or what I'm thinking about, or things of that nature? We just kind of let those things go, but we really need to stop and think about it and give consideration to it. Secondly, you've got to determine the solution. You know, as you're thinking about what's going on inside of you, what your thoughts are, what your feelings are, your emotions, why you make the decisions that you do, you're going to realize there are some needs. There are some things that need to grow. All of us need to grow. Everybody's area of growth is probably different and to different degrees, some wildly different from one another. And that's okay, because we're all different. God didn't make a bunch of cookie cutters, though he does want us to be cookie cutters in the sense that he wants us all to look like Jesus. You know, so there's definitely a mold that he's shaping us into in a good way. But as we see the need, we have to determine a solution. You get this need, and then you have to ask the question, well, what can I do about that? Because we never just look at our shortcomings, our deficiencies, and maybe it's not an immaturity thing, because sometimes we think of the word immaturity as a negative, and sometimes it's not a negative. Sometimes it's just we haven't matured there yet. You know, if you look at a 3-year-old tree compared to a 40-year-old tree, you're going to see a lot of differences. One is big, strong, healthy. If it's a fruit tree, it's bearing good fruit. The 3-year-old tree, you know, that thing's probably not even bearing fruit yet. It's not strong. It might still have to be staked down because of the wind. And you think, well, what's wrong with that tree? Nothing. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a normal, healthy 3-year-old tree. And as it gets older, it will be a much stronger tree, but it's not deficient. It's not wrong. It's just hasn't got there yet. So sometimes we have areas of our life that just haven't got there yet, and that's okay. Sometimes we see something that should be there and it's deficient, and that's okay too. We just need to figure out what the solution is. How do we grow in this? God, what do I do about this area of my life? Make a plan and do something on purpose to fix it. Because specific problems are not going to get solved by general solutions like, well, I'm just going to keep going to church and reading my Bible and think everything is just going to come together on its own. That's not really a good solution. That's like just throwing the seed out there in the woods and hoping it takes root and starts producing fruit one day. It'd be a lot better if you cleared a patch, got rid of the weeds, put down some fertilizer in the soil, weeded it, watered it, made sure it got sunshine, all those things. Once you determine a solution, then you have to integrate that action. You have to do something about it. It doesn't do us good to develop a 5-year plan and then not follow it. We've got to see the needs in our life, set a course of action, and then follow the course of action. That, have you ever heard there's kind of 4 steps to planning? You plan, and then follow the plan. We have to follow through with the plan and actually do something different. And that it's not saying that we necessarily work in terms of apart from God, but because of God's grace, we can do certain things to partner with his grace and appropriate the grace that he's giving us into our life and partner with him in being shaped in his image. And that's what we see happen in this psalm. And I wanted to lay that out there before we read through it so that can kind of be in your mind as we read through this and see what's going on with one of these sons of Korah. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the sons of Korah, but maybe we'll do that towards the end there. So getting into this psalm, it starts off, it's a very familiar one. There's a song based off of this. As a deer pants for flowing streams, so pants my soul for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? My tears have been my food day and night, while they say to me all the day long, where is your God? These things I remember as I pour out my soul, how I would go with the throng and lead them in procession to the house of God with glad shouts of songs of praise, a multitude keeping festival. So right there, what he does is he sees there's a need inside of him. He's wrestling with this, like my soul is longing for God. He said, I remember when I would go to the house of God with other people. You know what that indicates? He's not currently going to the house of God with other people. He's reflecting back on this, remembering it, longing for it because it's not there. He's longing for God. Sometimes and I think in some extent rightly so, we say, God, I want to pant for you like that. I want to long for you like water, like a deer, like this psalmist does. But there was a problem. The psalmist was in this condition because he wasn't spending time in the presence of God. And so it was a need that he had to be with God again and to be with God's people again in worship and in praise. So he longed for God's presence because he wasn't in his presence very much lately. And he identified that. Whatever it might be going on, if you're in some kind of funk, don't just take a nap till it passes, Sure, if you need to take a nap, take a nap. But then give thought to it. And look at what he does here in this next part. As he's considering this need, he says, why are you cast down, O my soul? Why are you in turmoil within me? He's questioning himself. What is going on with me? Self, what are you doing? Why are you bothered? Why are you sad? Why are you distraught? Why are you frustrated? Why are you on edge? You got to talk to yourself. Think through those things. Talking to yourself is not a problem. It's actually biblical. We see him doing it. Why are you cast down, my soul? What is going on with you? But then he makes a solution. He answers himself. He talks to himself. Notice this isn't God speaking to him. This is him wrestling with his condition, wrestling with what's going on inside of himself. And then he says, hope in God. For I shall again praise him, my God and my salvation. He's sad. He's longing for God. I haven't been with God. I miss your presence. Why am I so messed up? You know what? I'm going to hope in God. I'm going to go worship him again. And so he recognized the need. Now he's making his solution. But now what's the last thing he has to do? You got to act on it. You got to do something. And so what do we see next? My soul is cast down within me. He's restating the problem. Therefore, I remember you from the land of Jordan and of Hermon, from Mount Mitzar. Deep calls to deep at the roar of your waterfalls. All your breakers and your waves have gone over me. By day, the Lord commands his steadfast love, and at night, his song is with me, a prayer to the God of my life. I say to God, my rock, why have you forgotten me? Why do I go mourning because of the oppression of the enemy? As with a deadly wound in my bones, my adversaries taunt me while they say to me all the day long, where is your God? But did you see what he's doing? He purposed to hope in God. He said, why are you cast down within me? Why are you in turmoil? Hope in God. And what does he do? He says, therefore, I remember you. I'm going to purpose to meditate on God, who God is, what God has done, and what God is doing in my life. See, he reminded himself, by day, the Lord commands his steadfast love. At night, his song is with me. He's reminding himself what God is like. He's encouraging himself in the Lord. Even in the face of his enemies taunting him, he remembers that God is commanding his steadfast love towards him. And that's what we need to do. We need to acknowledge our need, look at the solution, and then purpose to do something about it. And then he repeats the refrain that was there earlier. Why are you cast down, O my soul? Why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my God, or my salvation, and my God. And the repetition that you see there, and even you're going to see in Psalm 43, which is almost like another stanza to this psalm. He goes through another thing, and then he repeats this, why are you cast down, O my soul? That means, and I think what it indicates is that this psalmist routinely went through this. This was kind of part of his walk with God, was checking in on himself. Checking in on how his soul was doing. You know, how often do we give thought to our soul? I mean, do we just think just because we're saved, that doesn't mean our soul is in tip-top shape? You know, we just because we're saved, there's still a whole lifetime of growing and being molded into the image of Christ. And so the psalmist went through this pretty routinely. And it's interesting because he's one of the sons of Korah. Does anybody know anything about the sons of Korah? Who was Korah? So Korah was a Levite, which means he was involved with the stuff related to the tabernacle as they were coming out of the wilderness. But Korah and two other guys, Dathan and Abiram, they challenged Moses. And they said, Moses, you think you're something special. You think you're the only one that's holy, and you and your brother that you get to be priests. All of God's people are holy, Moses. Moses said, you know what? Cool. Get your people, and we'll come present ourselves before the Lord, and the ones he chooses will be his. God spoke, and he told everybody in Israel to get away from those people because something's about to happen to them. They all offered their incense to the Lord. Fire came out from the tabernacle and consumed Korah and Dathan and Abiram and all their people. And the ones that didn't come to the temple or the tabernacle, the ground just opened up and swallowed them like an earthquake. Opened up right underneath their tents, all of them over like that. But it specifies the sons of Korah did not die. So Korah himself and his immediate in the rebellion, they died. But the sons of Korah did not perish with that. God spared them for some reason or whatever. We don't know. And you'll see some of the references to things related to that in the Psalms of the sons of Korah. There are two portions of Psalms. Beginning at 42, there's a section of Psalms from the sons of Korah. And then at 84 also. Anybody notice anything about 84? That's double. Something about 42 connected with the sons of Korah. And just as a side, I don't really know how much there is to it, but some have even suggested that Elisha may have been connected to the sons of Korah. And if you remember how many young men were taunting him about being bald? 42. Interesting. I don't know what necessarily the deal is there, but it tells you shouldn't make fun of bald people. Clearly, shouldn't do that. Anyway, I do right here. That's about all I got. But I just want to point out two other verses, and we're not going to really dwell on them too long. But in Deuteronomy 4:9, Moses is talking to the people of God as they're getting ready to go into the promised land. This is not the generation that died in the wilderness. This is the generation about to go in. He says, only take care and keep your soul diligently, lest you forget the things your eyes have seen, lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life. Make them known to your children and your children's children. We have to diligently keep our soul. You know, just when you go home tonight, sit down and think through, how am I purposing to diligently keep my soul? And keep my soul moving in Christ-like directions. And we see the same in Deuteronomy 6:4 at the greatest commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. Teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. And you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. In other words, your whole life should be consumed with the things of God. Everything about our life has to be diligently made to be a part of what God is doing. So as you read through Psalm 42 again and start looking into Psalm 43, just be mindful of yourself. Take some time to do some self-reflection, some self-evaluation. Pray about it. Ask God to give you eyes to see what's going on and discernment to know what to do about that, and then the discipline and the diligence to do something about it as he speaks to you.